The world is changed. We feel it in the water. We feel it in the earth. We smell it in the air.
Everything's computer.
According to philosopher Hannah Arendt, politics is the highest thing a human being can do. And yet, it is precisely our current world in which this type of action is discouraged. This impotence, this powerlessness is something that so many of us experience in the depths of our being. The faces of our oppressors are on our screens, which we carry with us everywhere we go. We see protests, well meant, but ultimately achieving very little. We watch video essays on fascism and leave a comment saying that it was a good video. We make video essays and see that people like it. Number go up. But so what? This video is about the experience of the new world. A world in which everything is computer. About this feeling of powerlessness and hopelessness. It is about what politics is and how a changing world has changed it. Just as we try to grasp this experience of the world in a deeper sense than people usually do, we also want to go beyond a mere analysis of the internet in this video. We will be looking at modern technology in general, and specifically also the device that has shaped so much of our access to the internet and our engagement with the world.
And we are calling it iPhone.
We will explore how the world has been destroyed by our phone and what that means for our politics and how to escape the prison of the algorithm. So, politics has ended because of our phones. But what actually is politics? Is it simply the thing that politicians do? Well, philosopher Hannah Arendt claims that it is absolutely not what politicians do. This is a crucial point to understand. But in order to understand it, we need to understand what Hannah Arendt set out to analyze in the first place. The vita activa, or the active life. In her later work, she has dedicated a lot of thought to the life of the mind, but in her landmark work, The Human Condition, she's concerned with the aspects of the human condition that has to do with doing things. You know, doing things, that pesky thing about being human that makes it so that you can't just lie in bed the whole day, but that you need to get up and do things all the time, constantly. And that if you don't want to do those things, but you also then don't do them, you feel bad about it? Yes, that part of the human condition. The active life. Arendt came up with 3 categories in which all the things we do fall. Labor, work, and action. We'll explore all of these later in great detail, so don't worry too much about them now. Action is the highest category of the active life, and it is the category of politics. Now, I think that most of us can agree that whatever it is politicians do, it is not the highest thing that human beings can achieve. So if politics is the highest human action, it must be something different than what politicians do. Now, action is a complicated concept, and throughout this video essay, we will be analyzing it through what we need in order to act. More specifically, we'll see how modern technology and the economy that it is embedded in destroy the things we need in order to act. But it is useful to start with some notion of action before we dive into the deeper stuff, so allow me to paint a quick picture. But again, this will all become absolutely clear later on, if I do my job right. Most important is that action has to do with freedom. Only when we act, we are free. And for Arendt, freedom is necessarily political. It is not the vulgar American notion of freedom, where it means that to be free is to do whatever you want, like eating freedom fries. And spoiler alert, no matter how many strokes Americans may suffer because their favorite fast food chain has gone woke, that is not political. Nor is freedom found in the Christian notion of having free will, because freedom then is not located in the world, but in the individual soul. Freedom is something we do for Arendt, not just the fact that we can make our own choices. What do we do when we're free? We start something new. Think of a political event like a revolution. People create a new thing, for better or for worse, but it's certainly new. As Arendt writes, men, though they must die, are not born in order to die, but in order to begin. Holy beep! That's a good quote. But let's move on because we have a video essay to get to. So we do something to create something new. But politics never affects just me. I am not doing politics when I'm daydreaming or when I'm just wandering off in my head thinking of utopias, for example. No, politics is done out there with others, in the world, with other people. A life without speech and without action is literally dead to the world. It has ceased to be a human life because it is no longer lived among men. This is a world we have built ourselves. It is a human world. It is a world where, even though people have different ideas about the world and want different things in and for the world, they are still united by that common world. Arendt compares this situation to a table. Everyone at the table necessarily has a different perspective on that table. However, they are still sitting at the same table. They are separate because the table is in between them. However, they are still united by that table. It is that table, that world, which is the starting point for politics. However, it is precisely that table, that world that we share, that is affected radically by modern technology. And if that table is changed or even destroyed, it has an effect on everyone that used to be seated at it. Let's look at how that table is changed when our primary way of engaging with it is through our phones. And we all feel intuitively that something is happening to that table, to the things in the world that we share because of the interference of our phones, of our modern technology. But how is it possible that we have this experience of the world being changed because of our phones? What does that even mean? Well, in order to answer this, we are going to do some phenomenology. Phenomenology? What? Exactly. Phenomenology. So I already discussed phenomenology in my first video essay, but I feel like this is a topic that requires a bit more nuance and requires us to delve a bit deeper into some things left undiscussed in that one. Phenomenology is the study of phenomena. Helpful. Phenomenology is the study of the way we humans experience the world. That is still wrong, but it is wrong in helpful ways. What do I mean by this? Well, we could say that phenomenology studies meaning, while the material sciences study matter. In explaining any philosophical concept, it is mandatory to use a cup. Otherwise, the Philosophers Guild will come after me. So, take a cup. A material scientist will look at the material makeup of this cup, while a phenomenologist will study the meaning of that cup. They will look at how I experience the cup. We will find out that this cup is something that I can grab, that I can drink from, that I've never seen this cup before. It is maybe a bit of a fancy cup, although it is plastic, and that I can only see one side of the cup at all times. All of these things are aspects of my experience of this cup, all tangled together into making this one experience of the cup that is useless for the physical sciences, but very interesting for phenomenology. It is along these lines that we need to think about the world when I talk about it in this video. The world is incredibly important in phenomenology. Phenomenology is the study of human experience, and well, without a world to experience, there wouldn't be much to experience at all. Conversely, humans are very important as well, because without humans in the world, there would be no one to experience the world. Phenomenologists therefore often try to use language that blends the human and the world together. Martin Heidegger, for example, talks about existence as being in the world, meaning to talk about humans is to talk about humans in the world. Always. On the flip side, the world is always already the world for humans, since, by definition, there is no world outside our experience of it. That is just what phenomenologists mean when they talk about the world. So when I say that the smartphone changed the world, I mean this world for humans. Something Edmund Husserl called the life world, the world of everyday life, the world that we take for granted in the background. Always. If I sit at my laptop and I'm typing away, there's this entire world in the background of that experience. That people might watch this, that there's a leaky faucet that I should really fix, that my landlord still hasn't checked the roof, that I can hear the city in the background, and that I'm going out for dinner with friends in a bit. Husserl describes this world in the background as follows. The everyday surrounding world of life is presupposed as existing. The surrounding world in which all of us, even I who am philosophizing, consciously have our existence. This means that if we look at our experience of everyday life, there's this world that I take for granted that is in the background. I do not think about it, I just live in it. Not only am I in the world, but we are, of course, all in the world together, always. Husserl writes that we, each I the man, and all of us together, belong to the world as living with one another in the world. And the world is our world, valid for our consciousness as existing precisely through this living together. The world is not something we live in alone. Phenomenology is the study of experience, and while my experience is of course mine alone, my experience of the world is always that of a world that we share. Other people live together with me in the world, and as Husserl claims, it is precisely because other people are in the world that it becomes a world at all. Others also have their experience of the world, they have their perspective on the world, they have their infinite opinions and nuances that are just slightly different than mine or radically opposed from me. Basically, the world building of our world is done very realistically, and it is through all these other characters in the world that it gains a certain weight, a certain realness. So, I cannot exist without the world cannot exist without others, therefore I cannot exist without others. We see here how phenomenology not only analyzes the content of our experiences, but also what makes those experiences possible in the first place. What makes it possible that I have this experience of drinking from this cup? Well, the fact that I take for granted a world to live in and that other people live in that world are two of those things. However, the world isn't simply there. It is there as something. All the things we do and make and think slowly build the world up in a certain way. Like a river eroding its own bank in one place and sedimenting this in another, slowly creating the bed in which it lies. How is the world made through this process of sedimentation? Or what gives meaning to the world? Well, the way I experience the world is affected by what I can do in it. I experience a tree as something I can climb, a button as something I can press, and a screen something I can look at. The body is of course not the only thing that gives meaning to the world. Hey, ik word gebeld. But the body, of course, is not the only thing that gives meaning to the world. There's at least one other thing that also gives meaning to the world. Technology. If there's a big tree, for example, there's no way I can get rid of that with my bare hands, should I want to. But with an axe, a tree is something I can fell. With fire or candles or lights, all of a sudden I can do things and see things when the sun goes down. All of this changes what we can do in the world. With fire, the night has a very different meaning. So technology reveals the world to us in a certain way. A hammer is something that allows me to build things that I couldn't make before. And when I am hammering, when it's hammer time, it sort of becomes an extension of my body. I'm then completely submerged in this action of hammering, of building a tree house, for example. But when the hammer breaks, all of a sudden I am ripped out of this activity and I see the world around me again. I see the hammer as something material, as something broken, instead of seeing the world through the hammer while I was hammering. Here we see the way technology changes our experience of the world. The question now becomes, how does modern technology, and specifically the phone, change our life world? What's up, gamers? I thought, what better way of explaining the world and what we can do in it than by starting a new one? Okay, so I re-downloaded Minecraft, but apparently my account hasn't bought it, and I'm not paying for this shit. So we're playing the demo today. Wow. I already played a tiny bit to check if it worked. I don't want to purchase. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of this whole video. So we've talked about how the world is something in which we can do things with other people. But Arendt distinguishes between two worlds. The natural world, this one, and the human world. Now, the natural world is the world in which we labor. And the human world is the world we build together by working. Labor and work are the first two activities of the active life. Hello, sheep. Hello, sheep. But I can hear you ask, labor and work. Ooh, is there a path? What is this? Labor and work, aren't those the same thing? Well, no, for Arendt, these two activities really couldn't be any more different. Sheep. So labor is everything that we need to do in the realm of nature in order to keep ourselves alive. I'm sorry, sheep, but I need food. Sheep meat. Labor is a necessity for humans. It is endless. I can eat this. It's probably not good for me, raw meat. I can eat this, but then eventually I'll get hungry again and I'll need to eat again. Ooh, pig. I'm going to eat the pig. Because I need to labor. I need to labor, guys. We need to labor. I need to get food. I need to eat. Look, I'm getting hungry. Where are more pigs? Sorry, guys. So labor is producing food so we can eat. Labor is cooking the food, eating the food, doing the dishes. And if you're anything like me, you could feel how this cycle really doesn't feel like freedom, right? Doing the dishes, cooking food is not... It's not something that is like, yeah, I'm free, let's fucking do the dishes. No, this cycle really is forced upon us by just the bare fact that we are alive. So eating and doing the dishes, all that stuff, like you just need to do them. There's no end to them. That's just what we need to do to stay alive. Giving birth is quite literally being in labor. I need a shovel. I need a shovel. I need some stone. Mine. Oh, stone. Finally, we're in the Stone Age. Hell yeah. So, while laboring, we can never be free, according to Arendt, because we are bound to the necessary and endless cycle of producing things in order to consume them and consuming things so that we can produce. Arendt writes that it is indeed the mark of all laboring that it leaves nothing behind, that the result of its effort is almost as quickly consumed as the effort is spent. Woo! Oh no, guys, I didn't prepare for the night at all. So this laboring, there's explicitly a cycle. There is no end and no beginning. Like, do we eat food? I actually need to eat some food. Oh, I can build a furnace. Do we eat so that we have energy to live? Or do we have energy to live so that we can look for food and cook it? In the realm of labor, we are little above animals, according to Arendt. So humans who are solely laboring, she calls the animal laborans, the laboring animal. Laboring always moves in the same circle, which is prescribed by the biological process of the living organism, and the end of its toil and trouble comes only with the death of this organism. So, while laboring, we could never really enter a world that Arendt would classify as human. Let's see if it's already light out. No, not yet. Not yet. Okay, we go back to the mines. And they call it a mine. A mine. Okay, let's go down. We'll see what's there. So Aaron points out, we're gonna get some diamonds, guys. Aaron points out that in a lot of societies, slaves were used in order to make sure that their masters could escape this cycle of necessity. Because one person's labor can produce sustenance for more than one person, right? One cook can cook for, I don't know, like a lot of people. That's just one person. In this way, masters could focus on other activities like work and action. Oh, iron! When you think of the difference between labor and work, think of the difference between the connotations of something being a great labor and something being a great work. When we describe a great labor, that thing was really hard to do. But when we describe a great work, that refers to an object that has been made that is of great significance. And in this distinction lies the difference between work and labor for Arendt. While labor is trapped in the cycle of production and consumption, work creates objects that last. In labor, we can ask, do we mine just to craft? Do we craft just to mine? And in work, you really can't ask that question. Because with works, we create works of art, but it also creates technologies. It creates the buildings that we live in, the tables that we eat at. While bread, as the product of labor, spoils within a couple of days, the table that we eat it at, which is made by working, can last generations. Like this cave that I'm building, if I were to actually like make something of this, I am creating a work. Like I could be making like, okay, hey, it's day. Let's go out. I need to see the sun. Like I could make something really beautiful out of this, right? The sun. And if I were to make this underground system into something really beautiful or even habitable, if I would put a bed here, you know, if I would make a house out of this is going to be my house. My kids could live in this place, right? My work on this house would span the generations, would surpass me. And anything like all the cooked pork chop that I made in this oven really is not. It's not. It won't survive. It won't last for 2 days. Well, in Minecraft it would, but like, you know what I mean. This work lifts us from the natural world into a more human world, a world that is more permanent. The human who works, who fabricates objects which create this kind of permanent world, Arendt calls the homo faber, indicating that this is the fabricating activity that takes us out of the mere biological necessity of nature and into a man-made world that is properly human. Iron! Yeah. Progress! It is this sort of permanent world of man-made works that create the possibility for people to come together and act in it, so that we're not just stuck in the cycle of production and consumption. Technology, like a pickaxe, shapes the world. It can build it up. And with better tools, like my stone pickaxe that just broke, we can create better and more permanent works. A world which is more stable. But, I will show, our modern technology does something different to the world. A world created by modern technology is impermanent. But how? How is that possible? It is tools and technology, in the most basic sense in which a hammer is also a technology, that allow us to work and to create works. But what does modern technology do? And how do our phones radicalize that? I think music is a good case study to see what has happened to the permanence of our works and world through the phone. The oldest notated song that we still have seems to be from about 1400 BC, but one could argue that we have even older still surviving music in the Vedas, which were orally transmitted as chants from about 1500 BC. Talk about creating a human world of permanence that spans the generations that can come together in it. Or take jazz musicians, which are all expected to know a certain body of songs that have been incorporated into the tradition, which originate in cafes and bars and are still played there. People came and come together in these kinds of bars to create music. The world this creates brings us together and connects us to a past through this tradition and to a future. This world has permanence. Only the existence of a public realm and the world's subsequent transformation into a community of things which gathers men together and relates them to each other depends entirely on permanence. If the world is to contain a public space, it cannot be erected for one generation and planned for the living only. It must transcend the lifespan of mortal men. Music as work creates a common world for humans to gather in. Music told stories of common religious myths, wars, events. To hear music, you had to go outside of your house to a public place in which people gathered to make it. A tavern, a bar, a theater, a town square, a place of worship. This changed with the advent of recording technology. With recording technology, music could be listened to when the artists weren't present. You wouldn't have to go out and listen to the music when it was playing. You could play it whenever you wanted. The music is something summoned out of the vinyl and played at will. The music has become something you can order to play whenever you want. German phenomenologist Martin Heidegger identifies this as a core aspect of what modern technology does to our world. It sets the world up as something that you can order. The German word here is bestellen. Now, one way of interpreting bestellen is in a quite trivial sense of ordering, like you can order a pizza. In the same way, when I play music from a vinyl, I order the music to play. I give a command to the pizza delivery service to bring me a pizza. In the same way that when I put a vinyl on, I order the music to play for me. When I cut the forest down for its wood, I order the wood from the forest. When I turn on the faucet, I order the water to come out. Imagine turning on the faucet and no water coming out. You'd almost feel betrayed, like that's not how it's supposed to work. Similarly, when I call someone and they don't pick up, I am annoyed. Like, they should pick up when I call. I order them to be present to me.
Who called me? Het is Max.
Piep. Max. Hallo.
Wow, waar ben je?
Ik ben in een opnamesessie.
In een opnamesessie?
Ja.
Oh jeetje. Heb je zin om te zuipen?
Ik heb geen tijd helaas.
Je hebt geen tijd. Je zei laatst tegen mij van joh, als je
Klopt.
een keertje een drankje wilt doen, kan je me altijd bellen, dit en dat. En dan bel ik je een keer en dan is het, ik zit in een opnamesessie.
Ja, het is oprecht.
Hoor je wat je zegt?
But order has another meaning in a somewhat similar way as the German stellen has. When we order something, we arrange it in a certain way. We set it up to be in a certain way. You can order a cabinet, but you can also order the earth into plots of land. When something is ordered in a different way, it means we experience it in a different way. Take, for example, a river. In the 16th century in Spain, there were some people who wanted to straighten a river. This straightening was forbidden, however, because the Spanish authorities claimed that the river was shaped by the Creator. The river was experienced as there in the world for itself. It was its own thing to be respected made by God, a brute force of nature to be feared, not to be used. But with the rise of technology, we have harnessed rivers for their hydropower. We have set machines in them to order their energy from them. We have set dams in them to order the way they flow. And this way of ordering the river has changed the way we experience rivers. It is now experienced as something that we can use for our own goals. For those of you who saw my last video essay, this might ring a bell. According to Heidegger, this way of experiencing the world as something for us has its origin in technology itself. It is not that technology is simply neutral. No, technology has its own way of revealing the world to us. According to Heidegger, it is the essence of modern technology to reveal the world to us as a resource to extract for our own goals. Getting back to music, what ordering does the vinyl do to music? Well, it orders the music to be present, but we've now also seen this other way of ordering. It orders the way we experience music. And since music was one of these works that created the world, it also changes the way we experience the world. So we now see music as something that we can order to be played and present whenever we want. Walter Benjamin says that due to the way art can nowadays be reproduced or ordered, it loses its aura. The way the work was in itself, rooted in a tradition that created a time and a place, changed. It is reproduced by technology in a way that destroys its permanence. But doesn't the recording make sure that the music doesn't disappear after it's played? Wouldn't that make it more permanent? Well, we're doing phenomenology, so when we're talking about permanence, we aren't inquiring into whether something still physically exists. It is about the experience of permanence instead of the fleeting experience of a work. But the physicality, of course, is still important. Think of the difference between having only physically reproduced music and digital streaming. My parents' generation grew up with a relative music scarcity, if we compare it to now. Even though music could be recorded and spread as never before, ordered as never before, it was still hard sometimes to get your hands on a physical copy. But these physical limitations, through which music was still somewhat inaccessible, although it was widely reproducible, have completely changed with our current digital streaming platforms. Streaming platforms have made music instantly orderable, to be played anywhere, any place, anytime. You tell me you liked a song, I look it up, listen to it. I can do it in my bed, on the train, after work, anywhere I have an internet connection. And when my phone isn't dead, which somehow my phone is always about to die. But couldn't you say that because we have access to music everywhere, it builds a world for everyone everywhere? How is it less permanent if we can always have music playing in the background? It is because this way of giving us access to the music digitally through our phones, which we carry with us everywhere, changes the way we feel about the music. As Walter Benjamin said, its aura has been destroyed. We started with music as a communal gathering, telling stories about and for the community. But now, with digital streaming, even the album, which became important with a physical reproduction of music, has lost its importance. We can listen to any song on the album that we want in any order, even in a random order, with a touch on the screen. People make playlists, ripping all of these holes apart and making a new hole out of it, but then often when it's done, don't really listen to it all that much anymore. Now, don't get me wrong, I love playlists, but they aren't made with future generations in mind. They are less permanent. They don't create a world that spans the generations. Like, how many forgotten Spotify playlists does everyone have on their account? This fragmentation of our music listening experience also reflects back onto us. There is so much music and we can listen to it so easily that innumerable micro-fandoms and subgenres emerge. Yes, we always have music playing in the background, but We could have other music play in the background. We listen to beats to chill and study to, non-vocal house remixes on YouTube to help you focus, study jazz playlists. I mean, maybe this is a bit of self-report, but I'm not the only one. Think of the felt difference between seeing an artist live, playing their physical music, and digitally streaming their music. On Spotify, it's easier to listen to an artist's top songs that are most popular than to sit with an album as a work. On every major artist's Spotify page, you have a playlist with essential songs, which is basically a contextless mishmash of songs that are deemed essential by someone else. By the way, keep in mind that I'm not saying that this kind of access to music is bad. I love being able to listen to music anytime I want. I also love being able to send the nichest, weirdest, hyperpop brain rot songs to the only friends that also enjoy that shit. But there are consequences to this way of interacting with music. And we should analyze these to properly grasp the situation that we find ourselves in, to maybe mitigate some of the worst consequences of them. How do music streaming platforms contribute to the end of politics, though? Well, keep in mind that it is not music streaming per se. I'm showing what modern technology does to the permanence of the things that used to create a world. Music used to be a thing that brought us together in a common, shared human world. Now you open Spotify and the first thing that you see is an algorithmically generated playlist that is based vaguely on what you listened to before, which was also algorithmically recommended. Instead of creating a collective human world through working, we are thrown back into the rhythms of something that is beyond our control, the algorithm in this case. And within this algorithm, we are once again condemned to mere production and consumption. Works, like music, are no longer used, they are consumed. Work has become content. As Arendt writes, the Industrial Revolution has replaced all workmanship with labor, and the result has been that the things of the modern world have become labor products whose natural fate is to be consumed, instead of work products, which are here to be used. We see in this quote that this all didn't start with our phones, but according to Arendt and according to someone like Heidegger, in the Industrial Revolution. But throughout this video, I'll show how the phone is the most radical endpoint of this process so far. For Arendt, it is important that things are used so that with them we can build a world that is permanent, that can span the generations and in which we can come together. But now in this world, everything is fleeting. Everything is produced so that it can be consumed, and everything is consumed so that we can produce. It is a never-ending cycle of these natural rhythms. When music becomes labor, or when work in general becomes indistinguishable from labor, we can create an abundance. We therefore treat all works as consumer goods, so that a chair or a table is now consumed as rapidly as a dress, and a dress used up almost as quickly as food. An abundance of music, an abundance of clothes, an abundance of food even. Their very abundance transforms them into consumer goods. The endlessness of the laboring process is guaranteed by the ever-recurrent needs of consumption. The endlessness of production can be assured only if its products lose their use character and become more and more objects of consumption. Due to our modern technology, our work has become indistinguishable from labor. We consume. We do not build. Nature itself is consumed, and we're not even building a world out of it. With the climate crisis that's going on, it becomes clearer and clearer that the consumption of nature ensures the impossibility of the creation of a durable human world. And although there will always be people that have this working impulse that try to root themselves in a tradition and expand upon it, the systems of technology and economy that have been put into place will work against this every step of the way. Musical traditions like jazz with its standards or hip-hop with its interpolations and sample cultures are rooted in this human world-building impulse. However, with modern copyright laws, it is impossible to do this sustainably on the internet. Hence why sample snitching is such a big deal within hip-hop culture. You can't just cover a song or sample it anymore. Music has become property that needs to make money, that needs to be produced in order to be consumed, not to build a world. Works have become fragmented because they are built around ads and sponsorships. Imagine watching a YouTube video and in the middle of a sentence, an ad pops up. This process of things being produced and consumed in order to make money, which means that everything is reduced to labor, to the rhythms of necessity, started long before the phone. But our phones are the radicalization of this process, the peak of all these developments. Before we built a human world, we were locked into the rhythms of nature. Now we're locked into the rhythms of technology in the service of our economy. Kanker.
Sorry.
Het laatste woord. What do I mean when I say that we are locked into technology, that we're trapped in the algorithm? I think that most of us, especially if you're the type of person who watches a video like this, intuitively know what I mean when I say that we're trapped in an algorithm. What it feels like to be locked into a doom scroll. Deleting Instagram and ending up watching YouTube Shorts somehow. Self-report. Watching YouTube Shorts on Google Chrome on my laptop. Fuck. But I want to show how the algorithm is just the latest stage of an earlier development. We have slowly but surely become entangled in a web of technology which robs us of our power. While a claim like this hopefully sounds intuitively right, it might also not make much sense on an intellectual level. Wasn't technology supposed to make us more powerful? Isn't technology meant to enhance our capacity? To make sure we can do more things in the world? Isn't technology supposed to make our lives easier? Let's look at Arendt, but also other philosophers like Heidegger and Flusser, to see the difference between technology that serves us and technology that we end up serving. There certainly is a lot of technology that serves us, like no doubt. Think of the spear, with which we could kill larger animals and more people than ever before. Think of a hammer with which we could build more complex things. Think of fire, which allows us to cook. Big deal. Airplanes and rockets expand our capacity so that we can fly and even go to the moon. Big deal. But now think of a modern kitchen. We can cook meals on stoves, in ovens, in air fryers. That makes cooking easier than ever before. We can cook meals that people who had only access to fire couldn't even dream of. However, while the oven gives us these ways of acting in the world, it limits other ways we can act in the world. I don't need to make a fire anymore, so I don't know how to make a fire. Now, in our lives, generally that's not really a big deal, but if I were ever in a situation where it would be important to make a fire, I'd be completely fucked. Or take a calculator. I've outsourced my ability to calculate things in my head to a calculator. I can add up all the tips from a night of work if my phone is nearby. I can cook a meal if there's a working stove. So, while this sort of technology expands on our capacity to do things, it also replaces them. They make us achieve more, but we ourselves as people, as these bodies, aren't able to do more. We have become reliant on these technologies. The way we use them now, they lock us into their systems. Now, I'm not saying that this is necessarily bad. I mean, I love having a kitchen. But what is important to realize is that through the modern kitchen, we become reliant on gas. And through our modern economy, this gas is gifted to us by gas companies, which give this gas to us for profit. It's the same with electricity and even the water that flows out of our taps. So it's not bad to rely on these technologies per se, but ours have been privatized and our reliance on them is used for profit. We've been made completely reliant on companies that use the things that we need to live for profit. We are locked into this necessity, into this cycle of consumption and production due to the way that the economy organizes our technology. If we are trapped in a world that is not a collective human world, but a world that centers around production and consumption, we outsource our capacities to our tools. We become reliant on them. And since our modern technology destroys a collective human world, the animal laborans, which remember is the way Arendt describes modern humans. The animal laborans does not use tools and instruments to build a world, but in order to ease the labors of its own life process. No longer do we build a collective human world with our tools, but we merely try to make the cycle of consumption and production as comfortable and easy as possible. But we've been talking about relatively simple technologies. Nowhere does this dynamic reveal itself more as in our most sophisticated technological trap yet. The algorithm and so-called artificial intelligences like ChatGPT. Let's start with ChatGPT. I actually really don't want to talk about this, but I guess everyone seems to think it's the sickest thing in the world. I mean, popular opinion has shifted a bit, I think, but when I wrote this script like a couple months ago, everyone was still, seriously, no self-respecting Gen Xer whose job is literally sending emails or filling out Excel sheets will shut the fuck up about AI because they think it will literally change every single fucking thing in the fucking world. Or take younger Zoomers or Gen Alpha who just take it for granted and use it as like a neutral tool and ask it questions like, ooh, when should I cut my toenails? Because they can't be bothered to talk to their parents like fucking human beings. So I hope it's clear that I really don't want to talk about ChatGPT, but I guess everyone is, so I might as well weigh in, but I don't care about this glorified chatbot. Unfortunately, ChatGPT and technology like it will change a lot. But for our purposes, it is important to investigate what it changes about us. It is important to see what role it plays in keeping us imprisoned in technology. Let's look at its position in this paradox of replacing our capacity to do things while allowing us to achieve more. Because that is what everyone is talking about, and I won't deny that ChatGPT and technology like it will allow us to achieve things that we otherwise couldn't have achieved. It will allow you to write emails faster and better if you're not good at writing emails. And honestly, who is good at writing emails? But it is obvious as well that if you let ChatGPT write your emails, you don't become better at writing emails. You just become more reliant on ChatGPT to do your labor for you, to ease your production process. Writing better emails with AI might seem harmless, but you will soon use it for other things. For example, helping you study. I've had really smart friends of mine actually come up to me and say that they started using ChatGPT in studying and helping write some essays maybe, but that slowly but surely over time they became reliant on ChatGPT for finishing their thought. Every time they had half a thought, they would be like, well, let's not think about this more myself, but let's do this in conversation with ChatGPT. Now, in that situation, the thoughts are still finished. The results, like writing papers, are still achieved. But you, in the meantime, haven't become better at thinking thoughts. You aren't more capable. But more than just replacing our capacity, we can ask what programs like ChatGPT are aimed at. Because that is a big difference between a kitchen and ChatGPT. I can't believe I'm talking about this. What do I mean when I say that it is aimed at something? Well, a stove, what is a stove aimed at? It's aimed at cooking. Its intention, what it intends, which is Latin for what it aims at, is to cook a meal. Now, that is not building a world or political action, but those two definitely would be impossible without meals being cooked. What does ChatGPT intend? What does it aim us at? Could we say that it aims us at producing things like writing emails? I don't think so. I think ChatGPT aims us at one thing: using ChatGPT. And what better way to show you than by using ChatGPT?
What way does Flusser's notion of apparatus say that an apparatus aims us at itself?
There we go. Willem Flusser's idea is a bit sneaky and elegant here. Yes. Now, you may ask, who is Flusser and what is an apparatus? But we'll get to that. This is the part where I describe a concept without referencing it directly yet, so you don't think I'm a nerd, and that when I actually get the concept there, you'll intuitively understand it. Pedagogy. So how does ChatGPT aim us not at something in the world, but only at using itself? Well, one, if we use ChatGPT like this, our research skills don't get better. So next time when I have a similar question, I am not better equipped to go look for it. I just need to return to ChatGPT. But that is the information part of the answer. ChatGPT does something more. First, it always opens with the fact that I am a genius for saying the things that I say, which I am, but it says it to everyone.
Wait, let's try. Let's try right now. Hey, should I cut my toenails?
Hey, okay, maybe not always, it's laughing at me, but often, okay, you know what I mean. I'm not sure when it does it, but at least here as well, it's still agreeable. It's always thinking with us, insofar as you can call what it does thinking. This makes us want to use it more. However, the messages always end with a call to action to use more ChatGPT. Let's look at that first convo that I had with the apparatus, where I asked it about the apparatus, like itself, how ChatGPT basically aims us at itself. Let's look at what it says. If you want, I can also contrast it with Marx's machinery, Foucault's dispositives, or apply it directly to social media and AI. Flusser gets very contemporary, very fast. I agree, ChatGPT, that's why I'm writing an essay on him. It ends with this call to action, with like, hey, I can do even more. Look at how smart I can make you. I can make you think all these good thoughts. Look what I can do. Use me, use me. And like technical blah 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 aside, it gives us a pretty good definition and illustration of what an apparatus is in Flusser's terms. But let's see what happens if we indeed follow up on this. Yes, give me more Flusser stuff, like you said. Yes. Let's go back to Flusser mode. It's getting cheeky on me. I don't like this. I'll build this out in a way that connects his core ideas and let you see the machinery working. Let me see that machinery working. Indeed, ChatGPT, that's the goal.
Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. The big takeaway.
If you want, next we can map Flusser directly onto Instagram, TikTok, AI.
Comparing to Magellan or Foucault, or dig into why he thought images would replace text as someone. Let's do Instagram, TikTok, AI.
Let's do Insta, TikTok, AI. Oh, hell yes. Okay, so now we have 3 different options that we can choose from. What do we want it to talk about now? The first one. Just go the first one. The first one, please. Perfect choice. Look, that's what we want.
You wanted me to pick that one. It's just bullet point lists as well. It's just only bullet points.
Pick the next pressure point. Eyes emoji.
Second one. Oh, yes. It's faking enthusiasm. Like, I don't even have to feel enthusiastic about this. Like, the ChatGPT is enthusiastic for me. Yay! Like, this is me faking enthusiasm in the camera. I don't have to do that with fucking ChatGPT. ChatGPT will just fake the enthusiasm for me. So I think the point is clear.
Through using the apparatus itself, what I mean when I say that an apparatus aims us at itself. But next question is, what the hell do I mean when I say apparatus? And how does that relate to the algorithm? To understand this, we need to notice a shift that has happened as we moved to these newer kinds of technologies. When Arendt wrote in the 50s, she wrote about the difference between a tool and a machine. A tool like a hammer that we control and a machine that we become reliant on. Even the most refined tool remains a servant, unable to guide or to replace the hand. Even the most primitive machine guides the body's labor and eventually replaces it altogether. However, when Willem Flusser wrote in the 80s, he noticed another shift that was happening in technology. We went from a machine to a device, which other people will translate as apparatus, but that's a bad translation, I think, so we're going with device. A device is not a machine, and everything mechanical has disappeared from it. A device is not mechanical. It is not based on moving physical parts that together produce a physical result. Devices are highly technical things, controlled by a certain programming, a certain code. They are black boxes that function with complex inner workings in order to realize a program. They are machines that explicitly interpret the world first through scientific texts or coding. Flusser's prime example is the photo camera. Take a painter. A painter sees the world and then decides to paint it in whatever style that they choose. But a digital camera doesn't work in the same way. It has a programming, a code through which it reads the world in this specific way, and then when you press the button, it appears through this coding on screen. For Flusser, when we paint, we interpret the world, and then the result of that is the painting that we make. But when we use the camera, we interpret the world through the camera. We see the world directly through the already interpreted world of the camera. We've already seen the same thing happen with ChatGPT. I can either be well read in philosophy and make interesting connections for theory reasons or even apply it to my own life, or I can ask ChatGPT for a summary. It makes me interpret the world through its lens, through the programming of the device. And this interpreting of the world through the programming of the device has consequences. It is these consequences that we're working through in this video. Through the example of music, we've already shown how the device affects the permanence of our world. We've just now seen how devices make us their own functionaries. They don't serve us in creating a world, but they lock us into their systems for profit. We become useful for them. We've seen this with ChatGPT, which aims us at using it. The same can be said for photography. Photography has completely taken over our means of communication. Memes, photojournalism, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube. But not only that, you need all these services nowadays in order to get access to these photos and video makers. Want to take pictures and videos? Better pay for a phone subscription. Want to properly edit these photos and videos? Better pay for an Adobe subscription. These subscriptions keep you locked into the system of the devices. You need a phone. Get a subscription for that. Want Spotify on your phone? Get a subscription for that. Want better access to ChatGPT? Subscription. Want a watchable YouTube experience? Subscription. These subscriptions are signs of the destruction of the permanence of the world, of being locked into this system of devices which doesn't aim us at the world, but aims us at using them. These subscription models lock us into the rhythms of consumption and production. We don't even buy things anymore. We just need to monthly pay for stuff. So it's just this, pay, work, pay, want to live in a house? Subscription. We've also seen how machines, instead of increasing our capacities, replace our capacities. This is how we come to rely on them more and more. Devices radicalize this. Not only do we rely on them to achieve things, we rely on them to interpret the world for us. They do this in a way that we don't even notice, so that we sink deeper and deeper into their quagmire. The algorithm is the highest development of this tendency so far. It shows us a world of its own making, almost unnoticeably locking us into the cycle of consumption and production. How is the algorithm destroying our ability to come together in a world that we make ourselves, in which we work to create meaning? So, now we've seen how devices destroy the permanence of the world. They also keep us from working and building a human world together, because they don't aim us at the world, they aim us at using the devices. They don't help us in building a world, they use us to keep themselves running. Now we'll look at how devices destroy the world because they interpret it for us, instead of the world being the result of something that is in between people. Remember the table at which everyone was seated. It was a shared reality, but everyone saw it from a different perspective because of the way they were seated at it. Everyone gets to interpret the table from their own position, but it is still the same table. But now the table is prefab. It comes ready-made, and this uniformity ironically destroys the way it used to keep us together. This unworldliness will throw us back into the jaws of the cycle of consumption and production. The world itself ready-made, meaning destroyed for maximum profit. But how is that possible? How is this the result of the world being interpreted for us by our devices? Let's take a look. The best example of a device interpreting the world for us are our phones. And more specifically, their screens. The thing that people say that our eyes are glued to all the time. That we literally can't keep our eyes off. The screen modifies our way of being in the world. But didn't hammers also do this? Yes, that's true. Hammers and screens, both being technologies, modify our being in the world, but they do this in very different ways. We've already explored the ways in which a hammer changes the world because it allows us to do things we couldn't do before. A screen functions differently. Let's think of screens in general, not even the screen of your phone or your laptop or your television. Just a screen. You're walking through a train station and you want to check the departure time of your train. You check the screen. You're at a football match and you want to check the time and score. You check the screen. You're at a festival and you can't really see the stage. You check the screen. Now, it might sound obvious, but we would never check a hammer for these things. A hammer makes the world present in a certain way. It aims us at the world as a world in which it is hammer time. The screen doesn't do this. It represents the world on itself. We check the representation of the stage on screen. We check the representation of the score or the time on screen. The hammer is in the world, but the world is on the screen. What does it mean for the world to be shown on screen? As Introna and Ilarco put it, because this data being presented on screen is presented within our flow of involvement, it is already relevant data. That is, data deserving our attention. Okay, what the heck does that mean? Don't worry, I studied the language these nerds speak. I'll translate. So, unlike hammers, screens represent the world to us. And because screens function in our flow of involvement in the world, because they are a technology that sort of guides the things we do in the world, like checking the time when we're at the train station, we take the things that are shown on screen to be relevant, to be deserving of our attention. At the train station, I take what is being shown on screen as automatically relevant. Why else would they show it on screen? Quote, "Screens promise to make evident our involvement in the world because they present an already interpreted and reduced world to us." Screens present us already ordered data, ordered by someone. This is very different from the way a hammer lets us interpret the world. The hammer is still in my hand, while the screen shows me what someone else has deemed relevant for my life. Maybe the lead singer is the only one being shown on screen when I'm at the festival, because she is deemed to be relevant by the people who control the camera, while I might want to look at the bassist because I think they're hot. In this way, a screen, while representing the world to us, aims at itself. It aims at its own interpretation of the world. Phenomenologically speaking, the screen is what is relevant about the world. We use the hammer to build. We are drawn to the screen to look at it. In this way, the screen is also a device. The screen interprets the worlds through its program, through its coding, and then represents this vision of the world to us. Our way of being in the world becomes determined by the way the screen interprets the world for us. Now, Introna and Ilarco say that not only do the screen and the hammer reveal the world to us in a certain way, they also hide themselves in different ways when we use them. When we use the hammer, we are not conscious of the hammer. When we look at the screen, we are not conscious of the screen. It reveals relevance. In doing so, it hides two things. The first is irrelevance. It hides the things that are not deemed relevant. For example, at the train station, I can check the departure platform, the departure time, inevitable delays, etc. But for example, I can't check the amount of dogs on the train. That is simply not deemed relevant. And we also don't notice this irrelevance when we look at the screen. We don't notice what is not on screen when we look at it. The second thing that the screen hides is that it doesn't present the world, but that it represents the world. When I look at the screen at the festival, I am not noticing that I am not seeing the bassist at that moment. And neither am I aware that there's an editorializing going on of what is being shown on screen. I'm simply looking at the lead singer. There's a technical name for this kind of revealing of the world which seems neutral but isn't really neutral. It's called ideology. Now, one technical definition of ideology would be the hidden content in the form. But what does that mean? Let's look at some examples which people would typically call ideological. There's this classic Zizek example where there's this guy in a movie, They Live, the movie is called, and he gets these sunglasses, and when he puts them on and he looks at a billboard with an ad for a holiday with a hot woman on it and reads, "Marry and reproduce." He looks at newspapers with all their differing headlines and front pages, but when he puts on the glasses, they all read the same thing. Obey. Basically, these glasses let him see ideology. Ideology is something like the message behind the message. A message that always reinforces the status quo. What is important for Zizek, however, is that ideology isn't some layer that coats our experience of reality with some secret messaging. This again he explains via the guy who puts on the sunglasses. Our first experience of reality is already an ideological one. We need to put on the sunglasses. We need to do that extra step to see how we are subliminally influenced, to see what that secret message is. We are all born and raised within ideology, raised with these unconscious notions that shape our reality. Go to school, get a job, raise a family, die from cancer when you're too young, or wither away from dementia in an underfunded elderly home. Ideological life. Now, the core of this idea that things shape the first experiences we have of the world should be a familiar idea to us by now. We also looked at how streaming platforms and modern technology don't change the world from what it really is, but change our initial experience of it. Yes, we're talking about how a world that used to be isn't anymore, but that world wasn't realer than our first experiences of the world. My last video, in which I analyzed Boromir's attitude towards the world, which, by the way, was completely fictional and isn't becoming more and more of a reality with each passing day, was also an analysis of ideology. But there is a nuance that we need to be very clear about. If devices shape our world in an ideological way, in what way does this differ from a hammer? Well, it is important to note that ideology serves a certain group within society, a certain class within an economic system. A hammer does not. On top of this, ideology hides the fact that it shapes the world in favor of one group over another. A hammer, although it is not neutral in the sense that people usually say that technology is neutral, is still more neutral than ideology. Ideology makes things that are for the benefit of one group over another seem neutral or natural. Zizek, in an interview, puts on the ideology sunglasses to look at a fair trade organic chocolate bar. In our natural attitude, buying this chocolate bar would be great. Way better than buying the other chocolate bars, and now we're also help fixing the world a tiny bit. However, when he puts on the glasses, he sees what this chocolate bar really says. Consume. Just buy this chocolate bar to help soothe your guilty conscience. Keep the big political problems far away from you by buying this. You don't have to undertake radical action to change the system that is responsible for global climate catastrophes. Yes, there's still slavery involved in the making of this chocolate, but less than in the other ones, and this brand doesn't like it either, although they do make money off of it. But don't think about that. Feel good about it even. Here we see how something that might seem normal, harmless, or even good is drenched in ideology. Ideology is in service of the political economy because it hides the real tensions in society and replaces them with ideologically fabricated ones. A lot of people think that because there is a housing crisis, we need to let less refugees into the country. Instead of solving the housing crisis by disowning landlords and stopping foreign investment capital, American investment capital, from buying up houses and using them to speculate with, instead of letting people live in them. Ideology makes the attitude of skepticism towards refugees and migrants the natural one, the normal one in our societies, and it hides the real things we need to do in order to fix the housing crisis or other problems like this. Technical devices are ideological insofar as they serve this purpose. All these examples are instruments of ideology, ways ideology concretely guides our actions. Technology can also do this. And now we can maybe see more clearly the parallels between ideology and the screen, and more accurately describe the inherent ideological functioning of the screen. As we've seen, the screen represents the world. What is shown on screen is never neutral, but is always already mediated by the choices made by someone else. And as we've talked about, just like ideology, the screen hides the fact that it is doing this and that it is not simply a neutral presentation or representation of the world. It hides the fact that it's someone else's interpretation. Everything we see on screen is a choice made by someone else. And I'm gonna make that awfully clear. Everything we see on screen is a choice made by someone else. From the home screen of your phone to the Word file that I typed this in, to the way Instagram and YouTube and TikTok show you short form content, and now you've lost half an hour, and how did you even actually start watching this? What happened? That's the key. Somehow, screens and modern devices hide the fact that they have destroyed the world and that they have locked us into this process of consumption and production. How do they do this? And how do they represent the world in order to do this? Now, it is of course not a uniquely digital thing to determine some things as useful and others as irrelevant, as noise or as static. If I want to do the dishes, some things just aren't relevant or useful in that activity. The thing is, however, that in a digital world, someone else decides what is useful for you. Not only that, the way in which this is decided for us is unique in a digital environment, and that is what we'll be exploring. Mirjam Rasch talks about this in her book Frictie, and she gives an example of digital sound recording. In digital recordings, we have something that we deem to be noise or static, a distraction which we can delete. She quotes Damon Krakowski in saying that the richness of noise disappears with digital recording. Conversations that appear on tape accidentally, the ineffable way in which different tones melt together, the warmth of an undefinable noise from the surroundings, the loss of the background that creates depth is, according to Krakowski, a direct consequence of digitalization. In a digital recording, sound is isolated, made discrete. When we isolate the sound of a voice, we can optimize it. We can get rid of all the background noise, like I do when I edit this video. I decide what is worth listening to. Your choice of what to listen to disappears. In a non-digital world, the listener decides what they think is noise and signal. Sitting in a restaurant, you can spontaneously decide to tune out of what your interlocutor is saying and listen to what is being said at the table behind you. So in digital recording, sound is isolated. Signal is separated from noise. Foreground is separated from background. Sound is made discrete, as Rasch calls it. Separate, distinct, clear. But how is this done? Well, in the digital recording, my voice is turned into data. And this translation of the world into data is the key to understanding the way the screen and other digital technologies destroy our shared world. Wait, I can hear you ask, how on earth is data influencing the way we experience the world? Isn't it just a measurement of the world? Well, Think of experiencing the difference between a painting on a wall versus the photo on a screen. The painting somehow has more of a reality to it, like more of a materiality, maybe I should say. It is crafted. The photo on screen has a different feeling. It is more fleeting somehow. It is made up of data and shown via pixels. How is that possible? And what is the exact difference between these experiences? Let's look at how data influences the way we see the world and how it is not as neutral as it would like us to think. When people talk about data, they often talk about how big data is helpful in analyzing large-scale trends. However, for our purposes, it is better to start with data in its smallest form. The data point, what some people even call raw data. Data? I don't fucking know. This is not my language. Mirjam Rasch, in her book Frictie, however, points out something important about raw data. It doesn't exist. Raw data is an oxymoron. The existence of such a thing is impossible. Data need an appearance, a form, if we want to do something with them. Even the smallest data point lets itself be known via steps of translation that are always artificial. This is important. Data can never be raw. We don't walk around and run into them. They aren't just found in the world. They are a translation of the world, not a neutral reflection of it. We use tools to measure the things about the world and create data out of this. The gathering of data therefore means the production of data. The world is this whirlwind of ambiguity, but when we translate it to data, we create a clear picture of it. Something is either a 0 or a 1 or a collection of these. But there is nothing outside of them and nothing in between. Translation is never one-to-one. Now, this is obvious if you speak multiple languages, and I don't say this to be mean, but multiple friends of mine who only speak English don't fully understand this. Other words and even completely different meanings are available in other languages due to the vocabulary, but also the structure of that language. A translation is almost never a simple translation of meaning, but usually also involves a transformation of meaning. Words have different connotations, sentence structures that are satirical or ironic don't translate that well, all that stuff. Translating the world into data, reading the world through data does the same thing to the world, to our experience of the world. Translating a fluid world into ones and zeros has consequences. It makes everything discrete and it allows us to delete one thing and keep another, as we've already shown. But what exactly does it mean for something to be discrete when it is translated into data? Well, in a digital world, everything is distinctly and discretely itself, cut off from its surroundings. Rasch gives an example. When we count on a finger, a digit, we make that finger into a discrete and countable entity. Quote, "The nail polish on the nail, the veins on the hand, the sleeve from which the hand emerges, or the table on which the fingers tap, all disappear from view the moment the finger becomes a countable unit." Data needs rigid categories in order to function. A digital world is a world in which everything is a piece. We've already looked at this when we were talking about music, how it doesn't build a coherent world in which we can be together, but instead it fragments everything into pieces which can all be individually consumed. Everything becomes a piece, a fragment, scattered, instead of being a part of a coherent whole. Heidegger distinguishes between a piece that is interchangeable with others of its sort and a part that forms a coherent whole. He illustrates the difference between a piece and a part by talking about the difference between a car and a body. If your tire is flat, you can simply replace it. This is because the tire is made en masse with other tires in the tire factory, all of them being made to be exactly the same. A car is made from interchangeable pieces. This also makes the car itself interchangeable. It really doesn't matter if you have this Fiat Panda or that Fiat Panda from the same year, if they're the same color. They're interchangeable. Heidegger compares this to our bodies. they are a coherent whole. The body is experienced in everyday life as this unified whole. Whenever I do something with my whole body is involved, whether that be drinking myself, whether that be serving someone else drinks, whether that be cleaning up those drinks because I spilled them because I was hungover at work. My body as the origin of all these experiences isn't dividable. It isn't experienced as fragmented in the way that a car is. My hand isn't simply something that can be exchanged for another hand. Therefore, Heidegger says that my hand is not a piece of me, but a part of me. In order for the world to be shown on screen, the parts of the world need to be smashed to pieces, or in the digital world, smashed to bits. Everything becomes fractured, fragmented, and everything that is shown on screen even more so. When you're doom scrolling, this state of almost pure digital consumption, every video is interchangeable for the next. The content of these videos are different, but what it is about is that you're watching different, distinct and discrete videos which have all become interchangeable, all become equivalent, of equal value. Doom scrolling isn't about the content of the videos. It is about watching short form videos that have all become interchangeable. The bits of the world have all become interchangeable because they all serve the same purpose. They are to be consumed. The touchscreen is the summit of these developments. The doom scroll would not be the same without it. It has merged the button and the screen, letting our fingers directly manipulate what is on screen by touching it. There is no friction between us and the content. Our bodies seemingly manipulate it directly. There's no separation between the button and the screen. They are one and the same. Sending and receiving, watching and reacting have all become the same activity. When we watch a video, this immediately makes the video more popular. Producing and consuming content have almost become entirely merged in the algorithmically generated content recommendations, which would not be as effective without the touchscreen. To rebuild the world to be shown on touchscreen, all the pieces into which it has been smashed are translated into bits, zeros and ones. Everything can be caught by the numbers, and anything that can't be caught in data doesn't exist. I referenced this in my last video essay, but Adorno and Horkheimer say exactly this when they talk about our world. Whatever does not conform to the rule of computation and utility is suspect. And that which does not reduce to numbers becomes illusion.
Illusion, Michael.
In our efforts to know the world and everything in it, we have put the language of data between us and the world. We have started believing what our measurements tell us. And, more than that, we've started believing that it is only they that can tell us the truth about the world. Not only do they always tell the truth, they're the only thing we should be listening to. As Rush says, data now has a monopoly on world production, and the world it leaves behind is not a shared world whatsoever. We believe that the world can be fully translated into data, into bits, into statistics, and that moreover, nothing will be lost in translation. Everything there is to say about the world can be said in ones and zeros. Everything that there is to experience and to be in the world can be shown on screen. The world is everything that is the case, and everything that is the case can be shown on screen. The world is the totality of facts, and all facts can be said in numbers, in all their nuances. Again, for those of you who watched and remember my last video essay, we explored how people were raised in ideology, meaning that they were raised to see the world through the lens of their political economies. What I'm doing here is showing how technology reinforces all of these attitudes, and how they actually help making these views seem natural and neutral. And to add insult to injury, in our current economic system, everything that is shown on screen is used to make money. The promise of a democratic internet has been sold to the highest bidder. Instead of the content of our screens enriching us, sending us back into the world as more capable and nuanced human beings, it keeps our attention locked on the screens to show us advertisements, to make money. We don't notice what the screen has done to us, what it is doing to us, because it has changed the fundamental way we perceive the world. No longer is the world a mysterious place full of ambiguity and hidden meanings. We've abstracted the world into rigid categories of ones and zeros, of binary opposites, ultimately knowable and quantifiable. This is the destruction of a world in which we can be together, which Arendt illustrated with the table analogy. A table which gathered us, but also gave each of us a different perspective because of the way we were seated at it. Now, there's no longer anything gathering us together. The table has been smashed to bits, the old wood replaced by plastic. Every one of us has been given a bit of this table, but we all can barely hear each other over the distance between us. At our own tables, we labor and relax, but that's it. We produce, we consume. Our capacities have been taken away so that we won't rebuild a new table which we can sit at together. The screen might make us see others. It might make us communicate with others as well, but it is no replacement for a world in which we can be together. COVID is a good example of this. Video calling became very popular during that time. And don't get me wrong, it was better than not being able to communicate with others, but it was no replacement for it. It provided no nearness, no community. This ideology reinforced by the screen, this keeping us locked into consuming its content so that people can make money off of our engagement and our attention to the world, is so pervasive that the whole world is transformed so that we can show it on screen. It has destroyed the fundamental characteristics of the human condition, which Arendt says is the prerequisite for politics. So this is where we get into the politics section. Politics we always do together in a shared world, according to Arendt. And so it was very important to see how exactly that shared world has been destroyed. Now that we have a deeper understanding of the way in which it is destroyed, we can more naturally understand what is necessary for politics, since it is the opposite of what the phone does to us. Instead of everything being caught in the categories of data in order to trap us in the cycle of production and consumption, Arendt calls the prerequisites for politics freedom and plurality. Let's look at what she means. So, according to Arendt, politics is done. Finito. Klaar. It is over because there is no human world anymore. A world in which we can act, be political, be truly human. But what does it mean for Arendt to be truly human? Well, there are two concepts that are central to her understanding of humanity. These things she calls natality and plurality, and they have been destroyed by our touchscreens, which are put in service of the economy. The first, natality, has to do with the fact that every single one of us is born. I think this concept is the most important thing and also the most inspiring thing in Arendt's writing. You have all these other philosophers like Martin Heidegger, which talk about humans as being towards death, that we somehow always, when we live, are aimed at our own demise, at our own end, at our own death. Well, Arendt disagrees and she reverses this. It is not mortality that is central to understanding human beings. It is natality. It is not death. It is birth. We've talked about the world and how it has ended. Now it is time to talk about what Arendt thinks is the most essential thing to humanity. A new beginning. Death is an end and so birth is a beginning. But according to Arendt, birth is not simply a beginning. No, every birth recalls the essence of beginning. In the birth of each man, this initial beginning is reaffirmed, because in each instance something new comes into an already existing world, which will continue to exist after each individual's death. Because he is a beginning, man can begin. To be human and to be free are one and the same. We all come into the world as something radically new, as something completely undetermined. Every new human birth reintroduces the mystery of the unknown future into the world. A future which can become anything, because people can become anything. So this is what Arendt calls natality. It is not only that humans are a new beginning, but it is that each human has the capacity to begin something new. Each one of us is born into the world, and the world then is a certain way, and when we leave it, we have irrevocably changed it. Arendt here doesn't speak of the natural world, but of the human world. We are only born uniquely as humans when we are born into a human world in which we can come together. In a collective world, we are born in a different way than animals are born into the natural world. Nature and the cyclical movement into which she forces all living things know neither birth nor death as we understand them. The birth and death of human beings are not simple natural occurrences, but are related to a world into which single individuals, unique, unexchangeable and unrepeatable entities appear and from which they depart. Birth and death presuppose a world which is not in constant movement, but whose durability and relative permanence makes appearance and disappearance possible. Without a world into which men are born and from which they die, there would be nothing but changeless, eternal recurrence, the deathless everlastingness of the human as of all other animal species. You can imagine it like this. Death probably meant something very different for dinosaurs than it meant for us. Dinosaurs probably didn't have a notion of death or even of extinction, and therefore, birth also meant something very different. I mean, insofar as they had something we can call meaning, blah, 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 blah. They probably had no conception of a world in which they could all come together, and therefore, it also meant something very different when someone left that world. And because they have no concept of ending, they would have no concept of beginning. In nature, there is only the cycles and their continuation. You have the seasons, there's the eating, there's the breeding, etc. Humans are different in this sense. We live with our own ending and beginning. Because, as I've said before, it is this beginning that Arendt finds most interesting. It is the beginning that is the essence of politics, of freedom, of being together. But why and how? How can a world be common if we are all so radically unique? The answer to that is what Arendt calls plurality. She writes, "Human plurality is the paradoxical plurality of unique beings." We need this plurality in order to be human. But in order to understand why humans need this in order to be human, we need to understand a distinction between plurality and multiplicity. Multiplicity is simply multiple singular things. We can have more of one thing. I can have multiple bananas, I can have multiple drinks, there can be multiple classes in society. Then we have one thing, but just more of that one thing. Like a banana is the same as another banana. There's differences between the two bananas, but they are banana. But this is different for people. Like when we have 5 people in a group, this is a different sort of group than 5 bananas. The bananas are multiple and the people are plural. We do not have a lot of individual people. That is not what plurality means. We have a lot of unique people grouped together. Plural, not multiple. Unique, not individual. So what do I mean when I say that people aren't individual, but that they are unique? Well, an individual is discrete. It can't be further divided. It is completely separate from its surroundings and it is completely itself. If we see a 0 that is like off or nothing and a 1 as everything or on, then they both contain everything they need within themselves. There's no off in on, and there's no on in off. Okay, but let's make this a bit more concrete. Especially African philosophers and philosophers inspired by them, like the Nigerian Innocent Azusu and the American Cedric Robinson, say that people aren't discrete in this way. Cedric Robinson says that our identity isn't radically different from the identity of someone or something else. We are incomplete within ourselves. We are indiscrete. Our identity is not complete within itself, but it needs to be related to the identities of other things in order to become itself in the most fundamental ways. Cedric Robinson describes incompleteness as the absence of discrete organistic integrity. We need others in order to become ourselves. We cannot be ourselves without a community. Our identity is inseparable from the people around us in some way. You cannot be fully separated from your family, for example. Whether you have a good or a bad relationship with your family, your identity is still formed in relation to them in some way. People walk the same way as their parents do, laugh the same way as their siblings do. Even friends take on each other's characteristics. Nothing about us is contained only in us. So much about you is found in other people, and so much of your family and friends is found in you. In this way, we are not discrete. We aren't completely separate from others. Because we are incomplete, we need others to be ourselves. Igbo philosopher Innocent Azusu writes that we share a mutual dependence and indebtedness, which he, in the spirit of Igbo philosophy, calls complementarity. If I want to be good at philosophy, I need a good teacher. It takes a village to raise a child. The fact that we're not separate from each other is a positive thing. We all complement each other. We are indebted to each other for our very existence and for every single thing that we want to do. If we were individuals, we would be multiple in the ways that bananas are multiple. We would be exchangeable for one another. And in a lot of places, we are exchangeable for one another because we have been reduced to a function. I am replaceable at my job by someone with the same skill set. I am not replaceable as a friend or partner. You will have someone completely different from me if you get a new one. So we are unique there, but not individual. And when we come together, we are not multiple, but we are plural. So this as an attempt to answer that question of how, when we are unique, can we have a common world? Well, the answer now seems to be we are unique precisely because we have a common world. These things aren't opposite, they require each other. We aren't multiple, we aren't just a heap of discrete individuals who sort of form a group. I guess they don't really need each other, but they form a group just because they are close together in space, or it's beneficial for one of them, or whatever. No, we are plural. To be plural is something different entirely. It is to overlap, to be an ambiguous community in which you depend on everyone else for your sliver of identity. I'm just going to say something in Dutch which makes all of this really clear. And it's kind of hard to translate, but I'll try. But I guess this is more for my Dutch viewers. We zijn niet meervoudig, we zijn dubbelzinnig. This sentiment can be translated to something like this. If we are multiple, that means that we are all different in the same way. We are all individuals. We are all ones. Or, according to Simone de Beauvoir, men are ones and women are zeros. This is what I mean when I say multiplicity is uniformity. If we are plural, that means that everyone is the same in a different way. The same holds for the world. What we've so far talked about as the fragmentation of the world, as the world being fully translated into data, is the world falling apart into a multiplicity. Everything is itself and nothing else. Clear, discrete, ultimately knowable in their singularity. We've talked about how this fragmentation of the world is the destruction of the world in which we can come together, and that all these fragments of the world now serve the goals of the masters of tech. No longer does music form this common world of tradition, but it is a fragmented landscape to be made money with. No longer is the world the arena in which we can do things together, but instead we outsource it to AI. No longer is the world open-ended and indeterminate. Instead, it is made up of categories which can all be shown on screen. Fully translated into data, individualized categories which aim us not at the world and each other, but at the cycles of production and consumption, to reduce us to a function of the capitalist economy. But as we said, we need to realize that this is a translation. The world might still be pried from the cold, dead hands of the machine if we find a translation which opens us up to the plurality of the world. The world is always translated in some way, so let's find one which is more open-ended. Miriam Rush gives us an example of this. She refers us to one of British writer Robert Macfarlane's word of the day. The glow of a river or stream in the darkness or dusk. The gleaming surface of a shadowed river. Kawakari can refer to the reflection of the moonlight of flowing water, or the gleam of the late sun at dusk. Rush writes the following about this. Macfarlane gathers these kinds of words as small poems, which eerily mix the alien and the familiar and are peculiar in their particularity. Imaginable and concrete, but not immediately definable. They deliver an experience of wonderment and yet offer a steady view on reality. It is precisely this wonderment, an open-endedness of the world not translated into something static, in combination with still having a shared, common, stable world, which we've been circling this entire video. Not multiple people, individualized, atomized, zoned off from each other into their own consumption nook, but a plurality of people needing each other for their own uniqueness to shine forth in the world. Not a world which can be caught in static categories, in which the only change is the set progress of technology which scatter us into our own lonely corners, but a world that is full of ambiguity, which still unites us. How does a word like Kawakari aim us at that table which unites us, but still gives us a different perspective? Well, let's say it like this. The Japanese word Kawakari or the Dutch word gezellig are untranslatable if we want a one-to-one translation. In this sense, they are alien. Different. But if we give a description of such a word, then it becomes apparent that they point to a phenomenon that we were already familiar with. It lifts us out of the chaos of this world and leaves this wondrous experience as wondrous. Pointing out the moonlight on the water doesn't make that experience less wonderful, less potent with meaning and mystery. It doesn't make you not want to make art about it. Not miss someone who you held dear, who loved the moon. Not long for a place where you used to play in the water as a kid. Not hope for the stillness in your future where you can once again sit by a lake and breathe in the crisp evening air. There's a plurality of meaning in the wonderment of the world, and yet it guides us all back to the same world. Hearing a jazz standard with your friends in a jazz bar versus hearing an AI-generated lo-fi track in a playlist in the background somewhere are completely different. One refers us back to the world in which there can always be new things. Now, translating the world into data isn't a problem in itself. It is very useful to know in some circumstances the intensity of the moonlight as it hits the water, how fast the water flows, the way light reflects back up from the water. But once any one translation of the world gains a monopoly on the production of reality, we're in trouble. Especially with the monopoly of data, which is used in order to make money for only a few people. The world has become a standardized, uniform multiplicity instead of an ambiguous, open-ended plurality. So, this plurality is so important for Arendt's conception of new beginnings, of natality. This newness can be seen in the open-endedness of the world and of the people in it. Never set in stone, always transforming. Each of us has the capacity to begin new things. However, this capacity needs to be nurtured. It needs the right circumstances in order to be used. And when, under the right circumstances, we can finally begin something new, that is what Arendt calls acting. That is what Arendt calls politics. Remember that action was that third stage, that highest stage in the active life, in the vita activa. The first was labor, the things that we need to do in order to maintain our life, that is done in the natural world, and which is governed by the cycle of consumption and production. Nothing in labor lasts. After labor, we have work. By working, we build things that are durable. These things together create a human world in which we can come together. After this, we have action. Action, or politics, is performed in this human world. It is the most human of all these activities because it is necessarily done together with other humans. It is in the realm of action where natality and plurality are fully expressed. Why? Well, take one of the clearest and most extreme actions Arendt talks about. A revolution. Her favorite example is the American Revolution. Now, a revolution isn't merely the overthrow of an old system, it is also the establishment of a new one. Something radically new is obviously brought into the world. But remember plurality, that no one exists in isolation. A revolution doesn't happen because one person does a revolution. It happens because a lot of people fight for a new beginning. And even if it starts with one action somewhere, which it doesn't, but just for the sake of illustration. If it starts with Washington or Lenin or William of Orange sitting in a pub and saying, "Hey guys, I'm gonna do a revolution," and the other guys being like, "You son of a bitch, I'm in." Even if that is the case, it is other people that need to take that action and carry it forward. An action never happens in isolation. It ripples through the actions of other people. All these other actions, which take up and carry on that initial action, change the meaning of that initial beginning. This is what makes action dangerous. It is impossible to know what other people will build on top of your action, what the outcome of your action will be. A well-meant revolution might end up being a brutal and reactionary dictatorship. Not looking at you, USA, because your revolution was never well-meant in the first place. Just like the world is open-ended in its meaning, so is action as well. We see how action is impossible without plurality. Because through plurality, each of us carries a bit of the other in us. And a bit of us is carried in the other. And we see now how our actions can never be disentangled from the actions of others. This is why action is the fullest expression of humanity, according to Arendt. It is this reliance on other people which creates an open-endedness, an indeterminateness in action. Because the actor always moves among and in relation to other acting beings, he is never merely a doer, but always and at the same time a sufferer. To do and to suffer are the opposite sides of the same coin, and the story that an act starts is composed of its consequent deeds and sufferings. These consequences are boundless, because action, though it may proceed from nowhere, so to speak, acts into a medium where every reaction becomes a chain reaction, and where every process is the cause of new processes. This creates a certain equality in the political realm, according to Arendt. Everyone in the political realm is equal because no one rules over another completely. Everyone does and suffers, acts and is acted upon. There is no one thing, one legitimacy from which all other acts trickle down. No king determining everything. No people merely following orders.
Gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest.
This doesn't mean no strife. It means no tyranny.
Get your hand off my penis!
Now, what this political is might still sound a bit vague, not very concrete. Now, for Arendt, this wouldn't be something that's bad or weird. Action or politics is simply something modern humans genuinely are unfamiliar with. How could we know of these experiences and activities to which we have lost access? In order to experience them and in order to fully grasp them, we would need to claw our way back into a genuinely human life. In order for us to act, to express our humanity in our togetherness, we need to come together in a common human world. We need to be aimed at each other, to use a metaphor that I've been using this entire time. But in Arendt's words, action, moreover, no matter what its specific content, always establishes relationships and therefore has an inherent tendency to force open all limitations and cut across all boundaries. It is our current technology in service of the economy that keeps our shared humanity hostage, that fragments our togetherness, our common origin in a common world, in order to keep us trapped in our consumption corners. It keeps us trapped in this giant technological world that it has built all around us just so that we keep looking at the screen. We've even left our task of interpreting the world to our technology, grinding the ambiguous potential of the world into dust and sprinkling it into our eyes so that we remain asleep at the wheel. That is the reason for the despair that so many of us feel. We are handed a world which seems to be stable, in which we seemingly cannot make a difference. We don't know what it is to do things anymore which aren't aimed at a screen. We are made to be alone, isolated. We make money for our bosses, and then a large cut of this goes to our landlord, and then when we get home, the only thing we do is look at a screen, the content of which rich people have fabricated, which tells us there is nothing we can do about any of this. The best we can hope for is a bit of comfort. This situation is normal, natural even. Of course the world is like this. How could it be any other way? What we now call politics is a spectacle to hide the fact that it is nothing more than the administration of goods and services. Merely a managing of the economy that doesn't work for the worker but only for the rich. And it is made to look nice and flashy on screen so that we keep looking and don't realize that this system is out there in the real world and that we can fucking do something about it. We can stop this. We can win. Normally I build a whole set and do all the lights and have makeup and stuff, even if you don't really see it. For this part, I wanted it to be a bit more down to earth, so I just put everything, the bare essentials that I needed, camera, script, sound, in my kitchen. And I feel naked or something. It feels ridiculous. Talking to a camera is weird, y'all. Like, what the fuck? So this is the part where I'll go a bit Jordan Peterson on your asses.
Clean up your room!
So we're gonna start out a bit self-helpy, but don't worry, like I haven't made a whole video on structural issues to just come up with personal solutions at the end. But we're also not gonna pretend that there isn't anything that we can do about any of this in our personal day-to-day lives. We're not doing either or here. Because, yes, I am gonna tell you to get off your phone. But we're getting off of our phones to help build a better world. And I'm gonna give some outlines for how I think that the theory we've discussed can help us in achieving that. But first, we need to take our time back. We need to reclaim our creativity and joie de vivre that the screens are sort of sapping from us, that are leeching from us. And I can also see the irony of me telling you this in a video essay that 80% of you are watching on your phones. But see this as my attempt to break you and myself, to be honest, out of this feedback loop. Also, these are the things that help me stay off my phone as much as possible. I'll give you the tips that help for me concretely, but I'll also discuss why I think they help me, in hopes that the reasons why they help me might also help you. But surprise, we are not the same person. So think about these reasons and why they help, and then help yourself. Also, please don't think that I am perfect somehow. Like, this is a constant struggle for me as well, but we're all just thinking through this problem together. Okay, 1. Clean up your room. Okay, hear me out. Jordan Peterson cooked with this one, all right? I'm sorry. It might sound logical or even patronizing, and I'm sorry, but a lot of people I know need to hear this. Now, by clean up your room, like, I also do actually mean clean up your room, but you know, everyone has their own standards, so that doesn't matter. What it means is take care of your surroundings. Take care of the little things. Water your plants. Clean your sneakers. Take care of your leather shoes if you have them. Do your dishes. Learn how to sew buttons on your clothes. And I'm very serious about these things. If you do these things, concretely these things, 1, you aren't looking at your phone, and 2, you are doing things. You are making concrete material changes to your surroundings, to your world in the smallest possible way. We've talked about how our body shapes our experience of the world, how what we can do in the world shapes how we experience the world. If our body is aimed at screens, our world shrinks. Our entire body is locked into our fingertips, which are glued to the screen. We feel what this does to the world. The world atrophies. Most of us are so far gone, me included, that doing these tiny things have opened up the world for me again, helped me to regain it, to once again stage it as a world in which you can do things and take care of things, not just something you float through without agency. Create a tiny world that is durable, in the first instance for yourself, at least. 2. Introduce friction to your phone. The system of technology that we are trapped in, which aims our very being at this technology so that we remain trapped in it so that they can make money off of us, relies on its frictionlessness. It wants you to not notice how long you've already spent on your phone. It wants you to do one little thing, to just check if you have a text, to just send a text, and then without any friction, you've gone off into another app and been scrolling for half an hour. You want to make being on your phone a less pleasurable experience, filled with more friction. For me, like a week after I bought the phone, I dropped it and my touchscreen hasn't worked properly ever since. I haven't had it fixed. It makes it genuinely annoying to be on my phone most of the time, which is what I want. I've also made my phone look like a dumb phone. Although I've downloaded a free app to do this because I am not getting another subscription just to get off my phone, which I have a subscription for. But now that app wants me to pay for it, so there's a ways to work around it, but it makes it even more annoying to be on it. And I'm still on it, but way less for sure. Delete Instagram and TikTok. Period. I do still check Instagram on my laptop to see what my friends are up to see if there's artists who have announced some shows nearby. And I am also not gonna lie, I still download it sometimes on my phone because I need it or because I'm addicted. But there's just really no need to have it on your phone usually. Just get rid of it. But these things don't help in isolation. You can delete Instagram, but in a moment of weakness, you can re-download it within 10 seconds and 2 or 3 taps on the screen. You need to build more structural things into your life. 3. Find an alternative to your phone, preferably one that re-engages you with the world. Carrying your phone everywhere you go has become somewhat of a necessity in this world. I won't deny that. Maybe not everywhere, but for most of us, we wouldn't want to be completely unreachable most of the time. And for a lot of us, it is simply unsafe to be unreachable. But for a lot of us, the phone is our primary way of engaging with the world. So, when we go out, we have our phone with us. We can only resist the urge to pull it out in every lull if we have something that replaces it. Something else that you meet the world through instead of your phone. And you kind of have to figure this one out for yourself, see what works. But you need to have something. You can't just expect to quit cold turkey if your phone is the only thing that you carry with you. For me, what I always carry with me, I'll get them, a notebook and a pen. I make little collages on them, so they are mine, and that also gives me some crafting time and just making stuff time for stuff that I want to make. So I write thoughts in these, and thoughts that you write down always turn out to be more interesting than when they were just in your head. I write down funny things that my friends say. I write down interesting or good lines from movies, from books. I try to either write something in my notebook, read a book, or just look around me when I'm on the train or just generally waiting around somewhere. This doesn't always work out, of course, but no checking messages, no scrolling on Instagram because I deleted it. And when I practice this more and more often without music even as well, it helps me engaging more freely with the world. It's like removing a TV from a living room and all of a sudden all the couches are aimed at each other and the communal space again instead of all watching television. Julian de Medeiros, a philosopher who is also active here on YouTube, coincidentally journals in the same way, and he calls it staging an encounter with the world. You choose to meet the world somewhere when you write about it, when you write down your thoughts about it. It is you interpreting the world. It is you choosing what to interpret, and it is you choosing to engage with the world when it strikes you. This has helped me win back the plurality of the world, articulating a tiny part of the mystery of the world, of what strikes me as meaningful, and developing my own thoughts about them. These thoughts are always open-ended. It's a note. You're not gonna have a closing thought in a notebook on the train. No longer are you letting your phone show you what it thinks is relevant through its predetermined lens. Now, these notebooks are probably not for everyone, but they've helped me. Or what has also helped me is carry around a poetry bundle, for example. But I think, in Julian's words, it is important to stage your own encounters with the world, to intentionally meet the world you are always already in. In this way, we introduce some friction into the world. When we carry our phone with us, the world becomes distanceless. We are connected to everyone and everything everywhere. There's no separation between being at home and being outside when we are on our phone. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, on YouTube. If we engage with the world where we are, without interference of the phone, we regain a sense of place, of distance in the world. And when we regain a sense of place, we are reminded of who and what is actually close to us. That bookstore which holds events sometimes, that local theater, these friends, these family members. Here. These are the people that you can do things with. These are the places in which you can do these things. You can only do things where you are. It sounds logical, but I think we've forgotten. Inside the house, I try to have more silence, but My ADHD head can't always deal with that. So I always have music playing. But when I have music playing, I play it physically. Now I play a lot of vinyls, but vinyls have become more expensive. So I've switched over to CDs as well. This lets me engage with music without even being on my phone. I also listen to curated radio shows or DJ sets on YouTube. One I want to shout out specifically is Club Carter Radio, and she drops every Monday with indie music, which is also nice to have every Monday, you know. It's Club Carter Radio. I don't listen to all of them, but I try. Because it's not like I'm never on YouTube or never on my phone. But I try to do it more consciously. I choose to be on there so that, hopefully, I can also choose to get off it again. But I promise that this wouldn't only be self-help, although as it stands, I do believe that this is a big part of the solution. But we are completely enmeshed in this system of technology and rely on our phones for digital concert tickets, digital train tickets, logging into government services, calling the doctor. All this stuff you need a phone for. Even to access a bank, you need the phone, or at least a computer. Flusser writes, and I mean, this is in the 80s, so phones weren't necessarily a big thing, but the point stands, I think you'll agree. It is therefore optimistic nonsense to claim that we have the freedom to not turn on the television, to not get the newspaper, or to not photograph. The energy that it would cost to resist the overpowering pressure of technical images would project us out of our social context. Technical images isolate those that, shoved into a corner, receive them. They isolate those that flee from them even more. So a big part of the solution, I think, is you putting effort into letting go of your phone as much as you can. Because the difference between a phone and like a television, a computer, the newspaper, is that you carry the phone with you everywhere you go. The touchscreen has made the phone even more portable, even easier to handle, even more frictionless. We can now be on it effortlessly anywhere, which means that we feel that we need to be on it everywhere. But again, we still need it. We don't have the option of not having a phone because we wouldn't have a social life anymore. Flusser said this in the 80s. No group chat party invites or spontaneous hangout invites. No checking I got home safely messages from friends when you're on the go. So getting rid of the phone isn't an option, but it is an option to regain your engagement with the world. And when you do this, you'll find you'll have more energy, more time, and more creativity. Spend that time on creating things, on creating works, things that aim at building a communal world that lasts. Focus your time on being with friends in that world. Build community. Now, don't build community with the intention of building a community. That's not how it works. Have a weekly movie night with friends that you can be honest with and that you can be yourself with, and things will develop from there. They did for me. Care for the people around you. Do it for them, not because you feel good about it for yourself. But things need to change systemically. Ultimately, we need to build systems that encourage being together instead of us being together in spite of the systems. And there are 100 million ways in which this can be done, but only one way in which we can achieve it. To do it and to work for it. Look for local organizations for which you can volunteer. Don't know how? Go to a local protest and just ask around. Who's there? You'll find multiple organizations there that would love to have you on board. You don't have to dedicate your entire life to the cause immediately, but every bit helps. Ultimately, as I've said again and again in this video, these technological systems serve to keep us trapped in the cycle of consumption and production. Trapped as a function of the capitalist economy. Now, if you've watched my last video, you might have caught some of the nuances in my argument here that I haven't properly had the time to explain, nor willingness to repeat. How a particular view of the world, which is the natural attitude in the Western world, is reinforced through the system of technology. And since capitalism will always devolve into fascism, as is becoming more and more evident, us resisting technology needs to be anti-capitalist and anti-fascist. Again, if you're confused at this turn, just watch my last video. It's only a bit longer than this one. This one's short in comparison to that one. Look for local groups and places who do this kind of work and join them in whatever capacity that you can. Join a union. Because ultimately controlling what technology and what the internet looks like means control of the companies that make it look like this, which will require government intervention. Our liberal governments will never do such a thing because it is against their interest, the interest of capital, to control these companies. It is our job to slowly but surely work towards a world in which we can hold these companies, these capital owners, accountable. What Flusser called a democratic programming instead of a programmed democracy. And most importantly, it might be hard, but we can just do things. We can work together. We can try to find moments in which we can be, what Arendt called, truly human, to act together in a shared world to create something new. Speaking of making works, material works that form a world, this is one of the reasons this video was a bit delayed, because I am now an editor of a physical magazine. This is not a promo, this is just something you can do. I made it with friends where we've sold out twice. There's poetry, short stories, philosophy, art, photography. Everything is in here. It is good. And it's physical. It's sold out. People read it. People want the next one. Like, you can just do things. Do anything.